Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today, Tuesday, May 12th, 2020 at 3 o'clock with SOC. Give me a second while I welcome our Spanish-speaking neighbors. Buenas tardes. Gracias por acompañarnos hoy, martes 12 de mayo a las 3 p.m. Ustedes que quieren acceso al programa en su idioma en español, por favor marcan el número que aparece en la pantalla, que es 425-436-6200. Cuando contestan la llamada, por favor compartan el clave o contraseña, empezando con el número 6, que es 627-682. Thank you for giving me a second to welcome our Spanish speaking neighbors. I want to start by thanking Gabe and Marisol for moderating the program yesterday. I wasn't feeling too good and they jumped in and I appreciate that. And they did an outstanding job. So very grateful to have a willing group of team members. My name is Tammy Rivera. I'm the Executive Director and Lead Organizer for Southside Organizing Center, SOC, or SOC for you old schoolers. We have a great team. We finished last week our first full week of producing this online forum in-house. Marisol, our communications manager, being the behind the scenes and sometimes in front of the camera person, as well as Gabe, our civic engagement manager, Edith, our forum coordinator, Drea, monitoring our Facebook comments and getting information to you all, and the whole rest of the team. We haven't missed a day with you all, and we look forward to seeing you in person again. In the meantime, you can always connect with us in all the ways you have in the past, with the exception of in person. You can call us still at our number 414-672-8090. You can email us at soc@socmilwaukee.org. You can visit our website at www.socmilwaukee.org, where we have all kinds of programs and services for you, including a page completely dedicated to information, resources, and ways that you can take action in response to the coronavirus. So please take advantage of that. And that changes daily and sometimes more than daily to meet all the information and changes that are taking place. We want to remind you of two things. One, we have a daily drawing for a gift certificate for $25 to a local business that supports SOC or that's doing an outstanding job of a good deed during this challenging time for us all. So all you have to do is answer a survey. It has 4 quick questions. It helps us understand what your needs are, what's working, what needs to be changed. And we have to demonstrate to the funders who support us that we're gathering input from you. And so we really need your cooperation and appreciate that many of you are starting to cooperate with that, and the surveys are coming in. Tomorrow, you don't want to miss the program. We have a great guest today, and we have a great guest tomorrow. Tomorrow, our longtime friend, Congresswoman Gwen Moore, will be with us, and we're looking forward to having her, especially in these times when we really need folks to give us direct information about what is happening. With that, I want to start out the next segment by sharing a disclaimer. We are really committed to ensuring resident voice, your vote, and a vehicle for you all to organize. And because of the type of organization we are, sometimes we can't sign off on some of your views or opinions, but we'd like to create the space for that. With that being said, the views and opinions shared today do not necessarily reflect those of SOC. And with that, I'm very excited to introduce you to Dr. Rob Smith. He is the chair of the county Human Rights Commission. He's a professor and the director of the, let me see if I get the name right, the Center for the Urban Center for Research, Teaching, and Outreach.
Yes, that's good. That's good.
Hi,
Thank
Dr. Rob. Thanks for being with us today.
you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited about this, Tammy. I'm so glad that you and I are in more regular conversations and communication. This is great. It's
Yeah,
absolutely great.
we have a lot of work to do, and I'm glad that we've begun to go down this pathway together with all the work that your institute is doing, and with Marquette being a neighbor of
Sure.
ours here on our northern border, and with the commission. We have about 25 minutes in this segment. I wasn't aware we had a Human Rights Commission. So I'm really excited to hear about what the commission is and what it does. Let's start there. And
Sure.
then, as we discussed previously on one of a project that you were working on that you invited me on, and in our conversation, we have a lot to talk about regarding the pandemic and
Absolutely.
the election. So if you could share with us a little bit about the commission, we'd really appreciate hearing it.
The Milwaukee County Human Rights Commission is in its 76th year. We've been around for a long time. There have been some ebbs and flows in that process, but the County Human Rights Commission really emerges in that post-World War II moment where human rights as a national and global concern had gained quite a bit of traction, particularly with the emergence of the UN and especially with the UN Charter and the Declaration of Rights. The language and the broader umbrella of human rights is so valuable and so critical. We witnessed this across the 20th century and into the 21st century, and I think that our issues here today speak volumes in terms of the importance of connecting them across the broader landscape of human rights so that we see how we are connected in those ways. One of the key things that we look to do, and we're working to have more of a role in this process, is to provide direction for the county as it begins to address any number of issues with policy. We want to make sure that we are in those policy conversations to make sure we are providing the necessary direction. And one immediate development that I think all folks need to hear about is recently, a couple of weeks ago, the county passed a racial equity ordinance, which is intended to expand the work that is to address the issues associated with racism being a public health crisis. And so our role as a county human rights commission is to provide the necessary direction along the pathways that will then operationalize that ordinance, and then to also connect as many of the groups that are doing civil rights and human rights work across the region. And in fact, we're looking to hold a statewide conversation in about a week, and I'll make sure to get that information to you. So we want to connect those organizations through the prism of human rights so that we begin to think about how all of our issues are directly connected. And the last thing I'll say is part of why we have to, in this moment, remember and revisit human rights very seriously is when our government does things that are in direct violation of some basic rights that we've come to expect government to actually protect. When government moves in the process of violating those rights in such egregious ways, we have to then raise the specter of human rights to then make sure that our government is upholding its responsibility to all of its citizens and all of the folks here in Milwaukee County.
We have a lot of ways that SOC intersects with that work. The main theme, of course, social justice, but many of those pieces. That's exciting to hear. We have a new day here. It's very necessary that we tackle some of those pieces.
Indeed.
And talk a little more about the state summit or
Yeah.
the conference you want to have.
Absolutely. On Friday, May 22nd, folks will start to get inundated with invitations to take part, obviously, in a virtual conversation that will allow us as a broader statewide community of organizations to then begin to shape the necessary narratives around human rights, and then to also provide some important direction around how human rights connect us across some of our disparate issues. And then finally, just to make sure that we are building a statewide platform that will resonate here, not only in Wisconsin, but then to also begin to resonate nationally. We want to build a regional, a state, and then also a national conversation about the ways that our human rights have to be protected and the way that government has indeed violated those rights here recently. This is the issues we face, whether it's around questions associated with voting, housing, uh, immigration, and rights associated with folks who are newly arriving to our communities. We have to make sure that we are at the forefront of providing the necessary umbrella protections so that we're all communicating with a little bit of symmetry and also communicating very forcefully through that umbrella of human rights. So on Friday, the 22nd, we will convene what will be the first statewide conversation to begin to shape that human rights agenda.
Glad to hear it and looking forward to taking part in that. Give
Yeah.
us some thoughts about the pandemic, and then
Mhm.
let's move into the why, WHY,
Yeah.
of the spring election. Give us some of your thoughts about what's happening with the pandemic and our responses to it.
Well, it is indeed a very scary moment in so many ways. But we also see that in this moment, we've witnessed some remarkable efforts on the part of folks who are just really being good neighbors. Being really compassionate members of our community, and we've seen that here locally. We've seen that across the country. We've seen it globally. This is quite possibly the scariest moment we've witnessed in the last 100 years. We all are, I'm sure, just a little on edge, even to just go outside. And then we have those really unfortunate experiences of so many lives being lost in this moment. And we know that our government has continually failed us in this, in the lead up to this, and then also in the responses that we ought to see from our political leadership. And we witness the failures on a regular basis out of DC, witness the issues with our own elected officials here in our state government and their inabilities to get on the same page about this. And so a lot of what we have seen in terms of addressing the pandemic has come from the very grassroots entities that we all know and we all work closely with. It is indeed the people who are constantly providing the necessary direction, the necessary support, and all of the various ways that we are looking to address this. Our public health officials are doing their absolute best to address and manage this, and they are uh, facing all kinds of challenges again from political leadership. And so, if there along this really deadly moment has been this remarkable upsurge of compassionate caregiving on the part of so many folks, and this is a clear example that the people will always lead us. It is indeed the brilliant displays of humanity on the part of our neighbors, on the part of folks like yourself and organizations like yours who have really led the way. And so that is what gives me the most hope. That is what gives me the most confidence. That's what gives me the most energy, because I want to be aligned with all the folks that are doing all the great work. And whether it's through the Milwaukee County Human Rights Commission, we have to have a leading voice around what human rights is supposed to look like, what it means to protect human rights. But then also at Marquette University, we have a role to play. We have multiple roles to play. We have to also be a very good steward in the process of being this important institution right downtown. We have our roles to play too. And so part of what I do at Marquette is to make sure that we are connected to the right voices who are on the ground leading these charges. And so we're going to continue to do that, and we're going to continue to push our folks at Marquette to be a part of the response in very important ways. And so the County Human Rights Commission has its role to play around the umbrella of human rights, but then our institutions like Marquette have their roles to play as well. And we're going to make sure that we play those roles.
I agree with you that during this battle, there's a lot of beauty, and that comes often from those folks who have the least amount of material resources, but the
Absolutely.
greatest amount of soul sacrifice. And
Hmm.
so we're seeing that in this challenging time, and it is inspiring. And we have to hold people's arms up during this time that, especially since it's extended. And so let's talk now about the spring election. We had a little conversation when we met prior to this you coming or getting invited to the program. But give
Hmm.
us your thoughts on um, the why of the election. We've so far gathered 2 pages now growing of people's questions and concerns and comments. But give us a sense of your thoughts around that disastrous day,
Yeah,
and and then we'll dig in.
absolutely. April 7th, 2020. I'm a historian, Tammy, and I want to make sure to say that to the folks listening because so much of what historians do is we have this fortunate and in some ways unfortunate lens to where we've seen so much of this before just in our studies. But one of the things that stood out to me is earlier this semester, I was obviously talking about Jim Crow era stuff, and I teach race and law, and I teach U.S. history, and so I often say that, well, folks have given their lives for the right to vote. And on April 8th, I had to go to my class and I had to apologize to them. You know, I had to apologize because I was extraordinarily wrong in what I had taught. And the biggest mistake that I made, and I had to apologize to those young people, I had to say that the folks indeed are still risking their lives to vote. That was something that I thought was in the past. I thought that we as a society and as a nation, despite all the efforts to disfranchise people, what I had not anticipated was that we would still be in a place where we would be risking our lives to vote. And in April 7th, in my humble opinion as a historian, April 7th was the lowest moment in the so-called democratic electoral process in this nation since 1964. It was indeed the lowest moment in our political process. And shame on the people who advanced that election. And this comes from some very high ranking elected officials who made that call, who pushed that agenda. This comes from the highest tribunal in Wisconsin, our state Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court. All of those folks are culpable in this process. And this is when we talk about government failing us, that is a very clear example of how government indeed has failed us. It was the lowest moment that I witnessed. And as a historian, you want to make sure that you're going about your craft with accuracy and truth. And so I had to, go to some of the elders and I had to ask some questions. I had to, on April 6th, 7th, and 8th, make sure that I was accurate in my approach to this conversation. And indeed, amongst the many folks who I spoke with, other historians who I count as mentors, other folks who've been around a little bit longer than me, they all confirmed indeed that that was quite possibly the worst display of America and American electoral politics that we've seen. Shame on those folks. Shame on us as a nation. You heard me say before, our political house is on fire right now. We see it every night in those things that we call press briefings from the White House. We know how vicious the political climate is in our own state. We have some very serious problems with our political house, and it is up to folks like us, the work that you all are doing, and all the countless organizations. We have to again save the soul of this nation, over and over and over. We've had to, as people of color, as marginalized communities, as poor people generally, we regularly have to explain and highlight and work to show that indeed the United States cannot continue to fail us, that we have to then hold our elected officials and then also those who are appointed. We also
Mhm.
have to hold them in with very rigid and stern expectations. And April 7th reminded us over and over of what our responsibilities are in terms of checking government to make sure they do what we need them to do. At the very same time, on April 7th, I took my son with me. He's 12 years old, and I had to give him what was probably and what will be the most important civics lesson he's ever witnessed and that he'll ever come across in his life, which is uh, the remarkable courage. I'm getting chills thinking about it. The bravery, uh, the um, relentless commitment to democracy that people in our city showed on April 7th. And I take my hats off to all the folks who went out to vote. I take my hat off to the folks who worked the polls. I take my hat off to the folks who were out passing out masks and other things. I know folks were bringing chairs for people to sit in. This was, props to Milwaukee. You know, props to
Mm,
Milwaukee. Great job, folks, because we stood up in the face of an egregious abuse of human rights.
indeed, it was. And the consequences of that will continue on. We've been monitoring our health commissioners' notice of how many COVID-19 infections they believe took place because of that. And we'll never know the full extent
Of course.
to illness and death and trauma
Yeah.
because of that. And at the same time, there's that tearing in your soul of I had a lot of post-election kind of regret because we fight with such passion for the rights consistently and continuously, right? Because it's the year
Right.
2020
It's
and
20.
we're fighting for election rights, the right to vote, and the fight continues. Of course, the strategy and the warfare and the weaponry changes, but the fight continues. But I remember, the day after, um, feeling torn because we were pushing and inspiring and bringing to light the need for the vote, and at the same time um was that the right decision because it put people in harm's way.
Mhm.
And so I'm sure folks all along our history have felt those same tearings, right? Like how much you risk. And a lot of the discussion is it can't be separated because people went out to vote, they risked their health and possibly their life. And some people didn't feel safe enough to do that. They stayed home and we respect that. But
Sure.
also voting, so that impacted and put at risk their health and their life. But voting also is a manner of protecting your health and your life.
That's right.
And so yeah, the folks, the people, the pueblo continues just to do amazing, amazing things. And those numbers and the weather and the risk and the age of some of those folks and their health conditions, it was just awe inspiring.
Right.
And hopefully, Dr. Ra, what we see from this is that has to resonate with every Wisconsinite and people in the nation and internationally at such a wrong measure of humanity that it awakens a new layer, a renewal, and something greater, you know,
Mhm.
that we
Mhm.
can that we see a new level of change, a new
Yeah.
threshold of commitment that we haven't seen in recent history. That's what I'm hoping
Yeah.
comes
Well,
out
and
of this.
here's let me do my historian thing just a little bit more because part of the value of the historical enterprise is to offer some analysis of how we got here and where we're headed. We for a long time we've talked about and we've used terms like developed nations, first world nations. We even had indicators of nations that were moving from second or third world to first world. Well, we now have a new category, and we are a nation, and we talked about it a little bit in our conversation a few weeks ago. we now as a nation, we are regressing. We are slipping in that first world category, in that developed category. When we look at the challenges that are imposed by a pandemic, and yet we have all these pharmaceutical companies charging us crazy money, and insurance companies. We
Mhm.
have an election that put people's lives at risk. We have unbelievable economic disparities across the board. We have problems with homelessness. This is in the richest country in the world. We are not what we claim to be anymore. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, it is up to, again, the people to right the course. And we are going to have to do that by continually engaging our democratic rights. We are going to have to continually demand that our voices be heard, both socially and politically. We're going to have to continue to expose the egregious injustices in our economy that this pandemic is exacerbating in so many ways. And so it is overwhelmingly the work of the folks in our orbit, the folks that we work closely with, and the folks we are whose needs we're working to address and work with on those fronts. It is up to us to right this ship, and it's going to be very difficult to do so given our current political house. And so we're going to have to be even more committed, and we're going to have to continue to muster that strength, that intestinal fortitude to continue to face these challenges. We've got major obstacles ahead, but if for my money, I'm banking on the people every time, every
Me
single
too.
time.
Me too. And some of what has taken place is just like right, the saying, you have to expose sin first, and things
Absolutely.
come to light. And so, definitely, the underbelly of the nation is exposed, and even at our state. And I believe folks are gonna want elected officials to be elected based on the principles, the values they raise, the plans that they have, versus the political chess playing and blockading. And that's another aspect of, I think it's unacceptable, and I believe other folks do too, that people want to get elected to office and hold office and get people in courts based on how clever, how extreme they can be in
Hmm.
that chess playing versus being elected by the people.
Sure.
And so folks are paying more attention.
Right.
I think more than ever, Wisconsinites are paying attention to the Supreme Court in Wisconsin like I can't remember in
That's absolutely
my
true.
life.
That's
I
absolutely true.
Yeah, they're paying attention to that. They're paying attention to the public health department. They're
Mhm.
paying attention to the governor's office. They're paying attention to local politics. We're doing our part in terms of taking this time to really educate people about civic engagement. Where civic engagement in the past was never invited to the dinner table,
Mhm.
people are inviting it to the dinner table. And so
Right.
we will have a more engaged and learned citizen who understands the process, which has to have an impact
Yeah.
on the next elections. What are your thoughts about what has to happen to protect that election in November?
Well, I'm going to quote Reverend Lewis. When I had a chance to talk with him as we were doing our conversation a couple weeks ago, one of the things he said that was as brilliant as anything else is, if the right to vote wasn't so important, if voting wasn't so important, why is it that there's a particular party that's going out of its way to deny as many people the right to vote as possible? If it wasn't critical, if it wasn't important, why are so many folks working to deny that basic fundamental right? Voting is the cornerstone to a democracy and a democratic
Yes.
society. That is how we speak. That is how we determine our future. That is how we then make sure that our progeny and generations after us have a modicum of dignity and respect with their lives. So we have to first and foremost get as many folks out to vote as possible. And you're absolutely right that that task is going to see many folks engaging in the political process, more than we've probably seen in a very long
Mhm.
time. So that's the first thing we have to do. The second thing we have to do is we can't get comfortable in this pandemic. We have to stay the course. It doesn't matter what governors or our president is talking about opening up the economy and all of that. We have to continue to get the message out about what is important to make sure folks stay safe. We have to continue to demand and encourage our neighbors to stay the course with those safety practices as well. If we don't do that, we know that with a virus of this type, there will continue to be flare-ups. We haven't even gotten to a place where we've seen a significant decrease in the number of folks who are dying. We haven't seen a significant enough decrease in the number of folks who are getting infected. We still have problems with testing. We hear about this all the time, and there are many more folks who are engaged. One of the other things about this particular task is we have to continue to work to get the information out to those who are not in the same communication streams as we are. Not everybody is cluing in into all of the different avenues and areas where they can get communication. So we've got to be able to get out and get the word out all the more. We can't get comfortable either in assuming
Yeah.
that the average person is just going to jump into any Zoom conversations or Facebook Live events. We can't believe that. We have to recognize that we're missing people, even though we are still working desperately to get the word out. So we're going to have to continue that. The third thing is, and this is going to sound a little elusive, it's not as practical. We can't give up hope. We really have to stay strong and firm in our belief that this too shall pass. So that day to day, on a beautiful day like today, yeah, we want to get outside and we want to get some fresh air, and we should, and we have to, and we still have to go about our day and enjoying the fresh air with safety in mind and safety first. So this is a trying time. As a parent, you know how it is. Our children mean so much to us. My son the other day, he said, Dad, when is this going to be over? And I said, look, young blood, you're going to have to settle in. I wish that I could tell you that this will pass soon. It will pass, but we may be here for a while. So unfortunately, your young childhood has been disrupted by this. But this is where we are, and we might be here for a while, and we're going to be okay. We're going to be fine, but we have to stay the course. We absolutely do.
Agreed. Before you leave, Dr. Rob, let's talk about your the video conference recording we did. I think it was a week and a half ago now, a week
Yeah,
ago. All my days are running. Let's tell
yeah.
folks about that so that they can look forward to when that's
Sure,
out.
living with history. So here, part of what we want to do, obviously, we're going to have to engage in the digital world more with all kinds of communication and teaching and education. We're certainly at our center thinking about the ways that we can be a part of expanding digital learning opportunities for not only students, but anybody who wants to learn a little bit more. Living with history is an opportunity for us to take very important legal developments, Supreme Court decisions, policies that are being passed in legislation, and make sure that folks have a broader understanding of what those legal and political developments mean. Not necessarily only getting into the nuts and bolts of it. We want to do that, but we also want to talk about the broader social implications. And it made perfect sense for us to, as we initiated that series, that our inaugural conversation was on the Lewis v. Knutson case, so that we could then talk a little bit about what actually happened at the various points along the way of our legal and political communities, but then also talk about the very real day-to-day outcomes associated with those developments. And so what you all will begin to, what our entire community will get from us is we're going to release that edited video probably early next week. And then we will do a continual series of conversations about important legal and political developments and how they resonate on the ground. We want to demystify the political and legal process as much as possible, because we know that a lot of folks, as you mentioned, are clued in now. Folks are really tuning into these very important issues, and they're not complicated. They're not issues that folks can't understand, we just naturally assume that elected officials and our legal community, that they're going to be responding to us as those leaders ought to. And now we know that that's not the case. And so we want to provide the opportunity to give folks uh, an advanced conversation about some of these issues, but then also bring those issues back home. Similarly, we also have developed through the center at Marquette that I direct, CURTO is the acronym, Center for Urban Research, Teaching, and Outreach. We've also developed a series called March on Milwaukee, a digital history series. So we're going to start doing a number of history-based conversations that resonate here locally, that get us into local history and get us talking about local history. This month, our focus has been on the open housing marches of the 1960s and 70s, 1967, 68. And then in June, we're going to spend the entire month talking about Latino history and the emergence of the Latino folks here in Milwaukee. So we'll be back in touch. And so we'll spend June talking about the important contributions of our Latino brothers and sisters here in Milwaukee. And then we'll situate that nationally and talk about some other contextual related ideas. And then once we move into July and August and July, we'll come back around to the question of voting as we begin to prepare for the fall election. And then in August, we're going to get into some other topics like the socialist past of folks here in the city and some progressive era topics. So we're going to take the issue of history and make it also very relevant and very immediate, so that we're not only having the living with history conversations, but then the March on Milwaukee series will be much more specific to our local history.
I think you're going to gain a lot of history students where people might have resisted that in the past with this type of town hall or video conference. I think it's good for us, and it's very timely. Thank you for your time. We appreciate you. We look forward to continue working with you.
Absolutely. We certainly will. I'll be in touch about a whole range of things in very short order.
Sounds good. Be safe.
All right. You too. Thank you.
So appreciative of our guests who have given their time to be here with you and explain things, especially Dr. Rob. Really appreciate him and the work that he's endeavoring to do at the county and at Marquette. With that, we're going to move to our coronavirus update and welcome Taylor.
Hi everyone, my name is Taylor and I'm the coronavirus coordinator with Southside Organizing Center. Thank you so much for tuning in for the coronavirus segment. Yesterday, Governor Evers did announce another turn on the dial for Wisconsin businesses, adding even more opportunity for Wisconsin businesses to get back to work in a safe and responsible way. Emergency order number 36 was signed with the Department of Health Services, Secretary Designee Andrea Palm, which allows all standalone or strip-based mall retail stores to offer in-person shopping for up to 5 customers at a time while maintaining social distancing practices. Additionally, the emergency order signed yesterday allows drive-in theaters to operate with some restrictions. All businesses must continue to follow all safety practices and guidelines as outlined in the Safer at Home order. Governor Evers states that in addition to added flexibilities and steps we have already taken for businesses, this is another disciplined turn on the dial that will allow Wisconsin's business owners to safely get back to work and Wisconsin consumers to support their favorite spots. So again, they do allow in-person retail as well as drive-in movie theaters to be open. In other news, I want to remind you that yesterday announced that there are 2 new community-based testing sites in Milwaukee, and one is on the north side of Milwaukee, which is located in Midtown at 5760 West Capitol Drive, and we have one on the south side of Milwaukee, which is at UMOS at 2701 South Chase Avenue. These are available Monday through Sunday, so 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I know a lot of the testing sites that we have mentioned in our previous forums were only open till about 5 p.m., but these do have extended hours to 8 p.m. so that if you do work and you're not able to reach there after hours, you're able to make an appointment or visit from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. No appointments or pre-registration is necessary. They are drive-through or walk-up testing. So again, those community sites are available, one at Midtown on West Capitol Drive and one at Umos on the south side of Milwaukee on South Chase Avenue. Those two testing sites will be posted in the links in the comments below. They will also be available on our website by visiting socmilwaukee.org. Thank you so much for joining us on today's Community Live Forum. I'm Taylor. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. Very useful and timely information. Very happy that she's staying on top of that for us because it's too much information to stay to manage. And so we're very grateful. We're going to go ahead and move on and invite on Gabe Charles, our Civic Engagement Manager.
Hello.
Hola, Gabe.
Glad to have you back, Tammy. So on all of these live forums, I've been talking a lot about the Common Council and different decisions that are coming out of the Common Council. So I just thought it would be useful for those that need it to give a refresher on what the Common Council is and who they represent. So the Common Council is the entity that makes all policy and legislative decisions in the city of Milwaukee, meaning that they introduce and approve resolutions, city ordinances, and they also approve the city budget. And the council is made up of all of the alder people of the city. So that's 15 alder people in the city. So let's take a look at how those districts are divided amongst the whole city. So we have on the left, the entire city. You can see how those 15 districts are divided. Those are the aldermanic districts of the city. And then the image on the right shows the South Side aldermanic districts. As you all know, the South Side Organizing Center serves the near South Side, and that area is divided mostly among the 8th aldermanic district, the 12th aldermanic district, and a small part of the 14th aldermanic district. So let's take a look at who the alder people are that serve our districts. In District 12, we have Jose Perez, who's a longtime Southside leader and has been alderman since 2012. And he was actually a guest that was featured on our live forum, and we always love talking to him and hope to have him on the show again. Then we have Jocasta Samaripa, who is the alderwoman of District 8, and she was also a guest on our show. Her election to the Common Council is historic. She is the first Latina woman to be elected to the Common Council, and she's also the first out LGBTQ member who has been elected to the Common Council. So this is historic. We're so happy to see her on the Common Council and look forward to talking to her again as well. And then we have District 14, represented by Marina Dmitrievich, and she was a county supervisor for a number of years. She was actually the youngest woman elected to the county board. So that's amazing that she is now serving the city of Milwaukee as an alderwoman. And she actually introduced something already after being elected to the council in April. She introduced the Safe Vote program that will ensure that all registered voters in the city of Milwaukee receive an application for an absentee ballot so that the fall election can be as safe as possible for those that wish to vote absentee, and make sure that that process is as streamlined as possible. So we love to see that these two amazing women have joined the Common Council and helped bring it to be represented a third by women, and excited to see them join Jose Perez, who's been a longtime Southside leader representing us on the South Side. So these are some really awesome leaders. We're glad to see them on the Common Council. And I just hope that that was a cool way for you all to be reminded about who represents you on the near South Side, and a little bit about each of them. And for now, I will leave you with a new face to talk about the census in a more fun way. So it's a short video. Hope you all enjoy it, and I look forward to being with all of you another day.
It's important to stay healthy. So you know what's something that you can do at home that doesn't require you to be around a lot of people? You can take the census. And it doesn't matter if you're into politics or not. It doesn't matter what language you speak. No importa si no tiene papeles. If you live in the United States, you need to take the census.
Okay, but like, what is it? What is the census?
Here's how it works. Every 10 years, the government counts every single person living in the United States. This includes citizens, non-citizens, babies, abuelitas, literally everyone. If you haven't already, you will receive a notification in the mail from the U.S. Census Bureau, at which time you can fill out the census online. Even if you haven't gotten a notification, you can still fill out the census over the internet. Don't have internet? No problem. You can fill out the census by mail and over the phone. The best part of it is you don't have to leave your home.
What kind of questions do they ask?
The census asks basic questions like name, sex, age, race, or ethnicity, how many people live in your home, how they're related to one another, whether you rent or own, and that's pretty much it. Now, we get it. Nobody likes doing paperwork. Paperwork sucks. But you gotta remember, this paperwork takes 10 minutes to complete and will decide what happens to our neighborhoods for the next 10 years.
So why is it important for me to be counted?
Here are two reasons. It's important because it affects our political power. The House of Representatives has 435 seats. Because these seats are divided up by population, the census determines the number of seats your state gets in the House. After every census, adjustments are made. After the 2010 census, states like Texas gained 4 seats in the House, while states like New York and Ohio lost 2. The census not only affects the House of Representatives, but it reshapes the Electoral College. You know, the system that decides presidential elections. Census data is also used to redraw state and local legislative districts to better reflect shifting populations. So, you don't want to lose seats in the House of Representatives, and you don't want to lose your political power just because you decided to sit this one out. The census determines how public services in our communities get funded. The government uses the census to decide how much money should go to state and local governments. That money is then used to fund public services like schools, hospitals, roads, senior centers, and other public utilities. It's really hard for the government to plan where they should put schools and hospitals if they don't know how many people live in that neighborhood. There have been instances where states do not get the funding for these vital services because they fail to meet the population requirement for certain federal funds. Take Circle Pines, Minnesota, for example. They were 82 people shy of the 5,000 population requirement to qualify for certain federal road funds. 82 people. The point is, if you don't make yourself counted, you're potentially losing money for your community, and that pothole down the street will never get fixed. The census will affect our political power. It will affect our elections. It will affect our daily lives for the next 10 years. That's the power of the census. And if we don't participate, we're putting our communities at risk.
So what you're saying is I can fill out the census, contribute to my community's political representation, financial future, and important demographic data for the next decade without ever having to leave my house?
Exactamente. So remember, wash your hands for 20 seconds, stay at home if you can, and make yourself counted in 2020. Because this is about the future of our families, our communities, and our country for the next 10 years.
Thank you, Gabe, for bringing us the latest and for your update on the aldermanic districts. I also want to mention we have a smidget of our district that falls in Alderman Borkowski's district 11 and a smidget that falls in Alderman Spiker's district, district 13 as well. Let me say some hellos before we move to our next section. Superfan Lily is with us. Hola, Lily. Jetty, Mari, thank you for coming back. Hola, Uriel. I see Andrea answered your question, and we'll make sure, Marisol, make a note that we'll get the link and make sure that we share also Dr. Rob Smith's Living with History, of which we were an invited guest. So we'll make sure that that's on our website and our Facebook. Carlos, thank you for reminding us. Alderwoman Samaripa is a SOC alum. She worked for Southside Organizing Center. So hello, welcome back. Welcome to new viewers as well. With that, we've been really talking up our youth program for a couple of weeks because the deadline to apply was this last Saturday for youth employment, and want to give you a sense of what incredible things the youth got to experience and also create. So with that, we'd like to share the PowerPoint for our pilot year of which was the summer of 2018. And Edith, who is now our forum coordinator and grants and compliance coordinator, she was the first youth coordinator we had. So here we go. We're going to go through these quickly. What the youth did, our first class of youth organizers. They did neighborhood cleanups. This year we piloted youth canvassing. So we trained them to talk to folks and get pledge cards, and found out some incredible things. People prefer to open the door to youth, and they like to cooperate so that the youth meet goals. So that was a hit. I have a consulting firm, and we did a personal and professional life design series with the youth. They got a whole training session from Carmen Cabrera from the Milwaukee Board Election Commission. They got a mini entrepreneurial boot camp from Nelson Soler at the Multicultural Entrepreneurial Institute. We made sure that everyone walked away with the library card, and they spent some time in the library, including the new technology room at the Mitchell Street Library, our brand new library on the south side. They helped District 2 renovate their landscape in an attempt to do some community police liaison and relationship building. They gave testimony at the CDBG Community Development Block Grant hearing, which was a major funder at that time and is a steady funder now. We did a whole program of give and get. So they gave and they received, and this is a perfect example. They went and helped Coral Centro with some projects, and then Coral Centro gave them a free class on deep breathing and yoga. The Latina Resource Center and the Black and Latino Male Achievement Program did a series with the youth as well. The youth helped kids with artists working in education in their summer rec program. Little kids love seeing teenagers. So that was a big win for everyone that day. They also helped with the Clark Square Neighborhood Initiative, and a former staff and veteran activist and musician Cecil Negron did a drum circle that was a huge hit with the community and the youth. They learned all about business improvement districts from Mama Bush, Nancy Bush, at the BID, and spent some time with her learning and helping there. They each year design their own project. This year was a helps project, a charitable project, and they created hygiene packs for people in the homeless shelter and women who are involved in street prostitution. They got a tour of City Hall with the District 6 officers and got to sit in the president's chair and in the chamber. They organized, planned, moderated, designed, did everything for their own graduation ceremony, including this PowerPoint. And we had big celebrations also at City Hall for all the youth who completed the Milwaukee Promise Zone program, of which we partnered with them and the Office of Violence Prevention to do an incredible first year, which is now a model project for the Milwaukee Promise Zones. They took a field trip to the Chicago Museum of Science and Industry. That was a great treat for them and learning experience. And here are our youth: Uriel, Jasmine, Jennifer, Christina, Dalina, we miss her, hoping she's coming back this year. And Uriel, we miss Daniel. Daniel now has graduated from youth organizer, and he's a canvasser with us. And this summer, he's coming back and to be a youth team lead, and Jennifer became a youth team lead. There they are with their families. We're very integrated with a holistic approach for their families. We want to thank all of our partners. Look at all the community collaborators that came together to make this possible. Very grateful for their partnership. Super proud of the youth. At this time, we have 9 of those youth making calls, canvassing calls. They're the ones calling you, asking if you have coronavirus information and resources, if how the election went, and encouraging you and giving you information for the census. Very proud of our youth and wanting to share the great things that take place here. Thank you. With that, I'm going to invite Marisol Diaz, our communications and digital manager.
To remind folks that our daily $25 gift drawing, all you have to do is fill out the survey, so make sure to do that. Thank you to those who have been doing it, and I will go ahead and announce the winner. The link you can also find in the comments section, so make sure to do that. You can enter daily and you can win more than once. So today's winner, we have Dory Zielinski. Dory, congrats. Thank you for filling out our survey. Reach out to us at soc@socmilwaukee.org to claim your certificate.
Thank you, Marisol, and congratulations, Dory. I think that's the second time you won. Excited for you. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow at 3 o'clock with SOC. We have Congresswoman Moore with us. And right now, we're going to end. Thank you. Be safe. And we're going to be sharing some thank yous to our funding partners.
Hello, SOC viewers. I'm Jasmine, and I'm a youth organizer. We would like to thank everyone for supporting our 3 o'clock with SOC live show and for completing our SOC survey. In addition to thanking our resident for attending and sharing our show, we would also like to thank the following sponsors: Wisconsin Voices, Community Development Block Grants, Mio Philanthropy State Infrastructure Fund, Movement Voter Project, Catholic Campaign for Human Development, Silver Foundation, City of Milwaukee Office of Violence Prevention, Tides Foundation, City of Milwaukee Promise Zones, all the faithful individuals who support SOC through their personal donation. Thank you.